to subsection 5. Subsection 2 4 first. ये सारी चीजें आपको याद रखनी है, सेक्शन 15 में ये काम आएंगे आपको. एक्सपोर्ट ऑफ गुड्स. नहीं, शेड्यूल 3 इज नॉट रेलेवेंट. वो आर्बिट्रेटर बटर हमने क्या लेना देना था, ऐसे 5 years टाइम हमने. बट व्हेन वी कम इनटू द लिटिगेशन मॉड्यूल उसको यूज करेंगे. Subsection 4, Section 2, Custom Frontiers of India means the limits of custom area as defined in Section 2 of Customs Act. वो 12 nautical mile जो भी है, you have to keep in mind कि वो custom frontier होते हैं. 5, very important definition, export of goods means taking goods out of India to a place outside India. It is different from Section 5 Central Sales Tax Act. Section 5 recognized penultimate exports, sale in the course of import as well as direct exports. Now here they do not talk of any contracts. They simply talk of taking goods out of India. It is export from India. Goods must go. Now supposing I sitting in Delhi buy goods in Germany, sell in Germany. This is not export. It's a non-taxable sale. Right? So if I have to show exports and claim benefits, then the goods from India must move to Germany. If they don't move, this cannot be exports in for this particular law. Export of services. We are only doing definition, we are not touching law, only definition. See, if you go to the model law, export of services are not defined in the Act. Now they are part of Section 2 of IGST Act with the definition itself. Very important. Maximum litigation is happening on this particular topic in the country. Whether these services are intermediary, export of services, वो सारे झगड़े चल रहे हैं सुप्रीम कोर्ट तक. वो सब झगड़े भी और चलेंगे, हर एरिया में चलेंगे झगड़े. So we have to be very clear on definition. We are not touching legal thing on this. This will do when we start IGST. It's a means definition. Supply of any service when the supplier of service is located in India. Now if you see all these, when surplus 1, 2, 3, 5, after 4 there is the word and. There is no word and here and there. What do you want? I don't have perfect okay. Export of services means the supply of any service when the supplier of service is located in India, the recipient of service is located outside India, the place of supply of service, Section 13 we will touch when we come to IGST. The payment for such service has been received by the supplier of service in convertible foreign exchange or in Indian rupees wherever permitted by Reserve Bank of India. 2 conditions. Payment has to come. Now, there has been a debate, in fact, in one of the cases I am involved in Bombay, where a person exported services from here, say for $10 million. He also imported from the same company services for $8 million. Right? So he received $2 million. वो कहता है मुझे 10 और 8 में सेटअप कर दो and therefore give me refund. Now the question was, is he satisfying this condition number 4 of Section 2 subsection 6, which lays down a payment in respect of which has been received in convertible foreign exchange. Payment word is not defined. The word full is also not, it's not before payment, the word full is not prefixed. Now such questions will come up for litigation. Okay, what do you do here? आपने 10 मिलियन का एक्सपोर्ट किया, उसी बंदे से आप 8 मिलियन की सर्विसेज आप. Is it the $2 million after setting off 10 versus 8? Will this satisfy the condition that I have received 10 million in for convertible foreign exchange? We will keep this question over, but keep in mind, the law requires payment in respect of export of service should be received in convertible foreign exchange or in Indian rupees wherever Reserve Bank permits. For countries basically they allow, right? So be very, what is convertible foreign exchange? Convertible foreign exchange where the payment is given by in foreign currency by the importer, but conversion rate in terms of India. इसके और भी variations हैं, but keep this in mind that this is the must condition. After this, they have written the word and. The supplier of service and recipient of services are not merely establishment of a distinct in accordance with explanation 1 in section 8. Now, if you go to CGST section 25, it defines section 25 defines very distinct person. But now you have to reconcile that definition with section 8.1. We will do it today. Now, all these conditions need to be simultaneously satisfied. There is no or word here. The semicolon, 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 and define the condition. So if any one of these conditions is not satisfied, this is not export of service. So what is the seriousness of it? Now suppose you jump to a conclusion, oh, payment foreign currency mein already export ho gaya. No. That is only one out of the 5 conditions satisfied. Basic condition is section clause 3, section 13 IGST Act. What was the place of supply? That's another concept we have not discussed as the definitions also, and we will not do it till we reach that stage. So that's it. Definition itself is very big. So this is export of service. It's a means definition. Nothing more can be added. Since it's a part of statutory definition itself, when read the section 16 of IGST Act, the zero rated supplies, this is a zero rated transaction, export of service. Now, 3 things: non-taxable, taxable, exempt, zero rated. Non-taxable but is not covered by section 9. Liquor for home and consumption and petroleum products. They are non-taxable. Exempt by way of schedule where there is no levy of tax. Taxable which are taxable. Zero rated is, it doesn't mean that tax is zero. It doesn't mean anything. It only means that if you are satisfying condition of section 16 subsection 1 of IGST Act, then all the input tax credit earned to do that transactions will be refunded to you. So all 4 things we should be very clear. Non-taxable, no input tax credit. Exempt, no input tax credit. So only for taxable transactions, for good supply of goods service or both, or for zero rate transactions only, you get input tax credit. Otherwise, there is no input tax credit available. Are we clear on this? Let's carry on with definition further. Import 2:10 to 11. इसको रट्टा मार लेना है कि इसकी डेफिनेशन सर्विस टैक्स से कोई लेना देना नहीं है. We are referring only definition in GST customs, इसका कोई लेना देना नहीं है. Import of goods means bringing goods into India from a place outside India. So similarly, if a foreign vendor buys goods in Delhi, sells goods in Delhi, for him it's an intrastate or interstate transaction. There is no import or export available. He has to pay tax. Right? For example, ODIR activities, if other than individual, you download a song from Facebook or Google, you pay for it. Either Facebook has to get a registration here, which they have, or they have to authorize any person to take a number because it is taxable. Interstate supply. We'll touch this today. Import of services is as good as export of services. We will leave this here for the time being. Intermediary. We will just touch it. We are not using it for today's discussion. In nutshell, the word intermediary presupposes 3 parties: buyer, seller, and an agent. If there are no 3 parties, generally it is not possible to visualize that this can be a transaction involving intermediaries. Again, there are exceptions. We will discuss them. But generally, by default rule, you need 3 parties. If there are no 3 parties, there is no intermediary. We call this in law transaction which is on principal to principal basis. Most of us hear these words, principal to principal basis. That is, there is no agent or intermediary involved. The buyer and seller are dealing directly with each other. Therefore, we say transaction is on principal to principal basis. Then we go to section 20 of IGST Act. In Central Sales Tax Act, we had subsection 2 of section 9, where certain provisions of local enactments were made applicable to Central Sales Tax Act. The central government of Parliament did not make law for those provisions. Similarly, under section 20 IGST Act also, all these 23 activities mentioned, 25, there is the rules of CGST Act will be made applicable automatically, including valuation. Right? This is the only purpose of telling you this. Section 20. Go back to CGST Act now. Master definitions. If you don't master definition, you won't understand anything in section 15. See, the word value is not defined in section 2. If you go to VAT Act, value of goods was defined. Here I have not defined. Because when we did section 9, they decide that tax shall be levied as per value determined as per section 15. Right? There are rule 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. We are not getting into rules, but wherever rules are very important, we will refer it. Rules are machinery provisions, they don't cut my ties in law. Now, if you read, go to section 9 once again, we'll read 4 lines to recalculate. Subject to provision of subsection 2, there shall be levied tax called the Central Goods and Service Tax on all intrastate supplies of goods or services of both, except on the supplies of alcoholic liquor or for human consumption on the value so and so. So they refer section 15 in section 9 itself. Now for IGST, go to section 5, IGST, chapter 3. Subsection 1, proviso. Provided that integrated tax on goods imported into tax on goods. So this is applicable only to goods, not services. आपके पास देख नहीं है सब्जेक्ट? You don't have this spiral bound act?
No,
Okay.
I didn't.
Okay.
It's okay, sir.
No, this can get you.
It's okay, sir.
Provided that the integrated tax on goods imported into India shall be levied and collected in accordance with the provisions of section 3 of Custom Tax charging section on the value as determined under the said act at the point when duties of custom are levied on the said goods under section 12 of Custom Tax. There are 3 sections. क्या नहीं मिला? IGST लास्ट में है नहीं?
Chapter 4 में
चैप्टर 3 होगा. नाश्ता किया था ना? घर में मियाँ से झगड़ा तो नहीं किया ना आपने? क्या तो सारे को डांट डूट के आ गए. अब भी मत फीलिंग सॉरी कि मैं क्या कर दिया. Okay. So other day we discussed that section 15 CGST Act deals with valuation of domestic goods or services, whereas for IGST they have made a special provision under section 5 subsection 1 proviso that these shall be levied as per section 3, that be 12. Section 3 the charging section, section 12 where duty determined, and section 14 of customs that deal with valuation. This is a very huge departure. Then side by side, let's go to section 7 subsection 2. So we are building up a background to section 15. Supply of goods imported into, again goods, only goods, not services. Supply of goods imported into territory of India till they cross the custom frontier of India shall be treated to be a supply of goods in the course of interstate trade and commerce. That is why we say imports are deemed to be interstate supplies under GST law, because the law says so. So section 7 subsection 2 makes it very, very clear. Now we touch section 15 before we elaborate section 15 today. Just before that, section 12 CGST Act. Just for reference, it doesn't have much legal significance in today's world. Time of supply of goods. So it is applicable only to goods, not to services. ये जब भी आप पढ़ेंगे ध्यान रखना, otherwise you will apply a wrong law while writing an opinion or a litigation. ये section किस चीज को लागू करता है? It's only to goods. Time of supply means at what time are you supposed to pay tax? That is time of supply. So notwithstanding what you do with your buyer or seller, the law says that the default rule is 30 days from date of supply you must pay tax. There can be a provision contrary to it if you have a contract. That is, for example, in a works contract you can say you shall raise bill on quarterly basis. So unless there is something like this in writing between the supplier and the recipient, you are supposed to follow section 12 for goods, section 13 for services. We are dealing with goods or not services. The liability to pay tax on goods shall arise at the time of supply as determined in accordance with the provisions of this section. The time of supply of goods shall be earlier of the following dates, vagara vagara. You can go through it. There is no law involved there. So we need not read anything else on this. But you must remember, time of supply determines at which goods will be valued. Like we just read section 5 of GST Act, at the time when goods are put for valuation. So अगर आपने 1.5 साल goods आपने warehouse में रखे, for example, steel के झगड़े चल रहे हैं. Yesterday only. Now they want to charge IGST on the value determined today. It's a high sale. तो बंदा मर गया. 35% rates have gone up. There was some dispute between the seller and the buyer. Sorted out. Now when you file the bill of entry, he says, sir, आज का value. मुझे तुम्हारी high sale के वैसे कुछ जगह देना नहीं. Value आज के दबा तो अपने value लगा. So value, that to section 12, time of supply is very important, where we should know कि time of supply means this, कि जिस समय आपको tax देना है. So if as a good businessman you are not agile, कि where is the market moving in terms of commodity exchange, you will end up paying more tax. And if you are not entitled to import tax credit, then you will suffer very badly. For example, you are importing something making tax-free goods or non-taxable goods. So input tax nahi hai. So as lawyers, we must advise our clients, if dear, this is it, what you manufacture is not taxable. Therefore, input tax credit will not be given to you. If you pay a higher IGST on imports, it's your cost. Right? Under section 14, Customs Act, there are two kinds of minimum duties. One is a tariff value, one is assessable value. 14.1, 14.2. A tariff value, though it is against the GATT convention, but GATT convention has allowed developing countries to fix tariff values for certain commodities. Where a government by a notification fixes a tariff value, steel shall be valued at 10,000 rupees per ton, full stop. You may import for 9,000, 8,000. If you import at higher value, otherwise minimum 10,000 rupees. That we call in tariff value in terms of Custom Act 62, read with Custom Tariff Act 1975. One is assessable value, which is your transaction value. Once you have transaction value, default rule. Just default rule, I'm not going into law. All expenses that the importer incurs before the goods are cleared from customs are includable the assessable value. There was a recent case by Supreme Court where the importer incurred marketing expenses worth millions of dollars before the goods landed in country. Custom officer कहता है भाई पैसे दो अभी तो गुड्स तो आए नहीं. You have spent $2 million or whatever.
Because I think Vivo versus.
Yes. Case went to Supreme Court. Supreme Court read section 3, 12 and 14. They said no. These expenses were supposed to be post-importation, not pre-importation. Marketing comes after goods come here. And there was no contract between the foreign exporter and Indian importer that you shall incur that expense. Now supposing reverse it, supposing there was a contract, then this was includable and accessible. Okay. So as lawyers, if you slowly diversify into customs, it's a allied law, it's very easy, it's not very difficult law, then you can understand how this moves. Now whatever is includable in assessed value, that is also a valuation for the purpose of GST. Because your goods are going to be valued as per section 312 read with section 14. So जो भी कस्टम की वैल्यू में एक्सपेंसेस खर्चे जो भी इंक्लूडेबल है वो आपके IGST में भी लगेगा, right? Okay, section 15. It's not a difficult section. It's not at all very difficult, but you will have to be very clear because this is the basis for tax. और बहुत सारी चीजें इसमें we will keep discussing the examples. We first go to explanation, section 15 explanation. Custom also had a related party transaction, excise also had, VAT also had, but here definition is more specific and clear. It says persons, you remember this definition of including definition, so many people are there. Persons shall be deemed to be related whenever in law there is a deeming provision. Deemed, this means it will have full play. Wherever this word is used, wherever this phrase is used, it will be used throughout the act. So deeming provisions have full effect in law. For example, central sales tax. The whole act is based on deeming provisions. Section 3, 4, 5, 6, all are deeming provisions. A transaction shall be deemed to be in this course of so shall be deemed to be high sea sale, exports, all deeming provisions. So deeming provisions have full value. So they say for the purpose of this particular provision, the person shall be, for the purposes of this act, the person shall be deemed to be related person. Remember, for the purpose of this act means this definition, wherever related party is mentioned, this is applicable in the entire act. Such persons or officers, वगैरह, you can read this. I'm not going to read this, waste time on this. But these are shall be deemed. That is, when the deeming definition, this also is a restrictive definition. It is final. There is no other person who can be a related party, right? So we have done this first because we will use this. Then go to section 25. I think distinct person section 25. We touch that also. Okay, we'll touch it whenever needed. The value of supply. There is a difference in law between value and cost. Cost is at which you acquire goods. Value is at which you sell. So value shall include profit margin, your expenses. Supreme Court in L&D case in first contract, they distinguished the Article 366/29AB dealing with works contract deals with value, not cost. So you cannot tax profit again, because the subcontractor's value includes cost plus profit. That's why it becomes value. So there is a difference between value and cost. Cost is at which you acquire goods. Now cost in tax laws means landed cost. That is, by the time you book your cost of purchases, all expenses should have been added. So when you file a bill of entry, you add all expenses. अब accounting में हम कार्टेज लग करते हैं, ये लग वो करते हैं, but at the same time they are part of your trading account, right? They become a part of trading account, therefore they become a cost of your purchase. How you compute GP ratios, I don't know, but this becomes the cost of your purchase. The difference between cost and value, you must always keep in mind that there is a difference. Value includes cost plus profits. Cost is at which you acquire. So section 15 deals with value. Why value? Because this is supply. तो गुड्स बना के खरीद के तभी तो बेचेंगे आप. That's why the lawmakers have used the word value of a supply of goods or services or both shall be the transaction value. So remember difference between activity and transaction. Activity is what you do. Transaction is what you finally arrive at with the buyer for investment of price. That's transaction. It's a sale or a job work or a stock transfer or a intrastate supply, interstate or export, import. They are all nature of transactions. So the value of transaction, well, transaction value, which is the price actually paid or payable. So it not only covers the concept of sale, paid, but also agreement to sell payable. Say for example, I enter into a contract with a supplier कि सर फॉरवर्ड कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है स्टील का 2 महीने का, we will pay you cost plus 10%, or ET rate or business rate plus 10%. That is the price paid. The price is not fixed, right? Supposing you do hedging. Hedging is based on this principle. But where you enter into a contract, my contract is 10,000 per ton, valid for 15 days. Now this is price to be paid. So you have to be very careful, paid and payable. Because you might say, okay, on invoice I'll pay 40%, 30-20 later on. The price payable is full 100%, not on what mentioned in invoice. Especially in case of continuous supply transactions, where one supply may cover 20 invoices, but you are supposed to pay all 20 invoices together. That is why the input tax credit is available to you at the end when final supply is made. You cannot get input tax credit on each invoice if you have a contract for continuous supply of transactions. So lawmakers were very agile to this. The people might camouflage this transaction, pay on 1 and don't pay on 19. So they say one input tax credit, complete your continuous supply transactions. Right?
But then in long-term contracts, usually which happens with the electricity board or any kind of a government contract, they have a long-term contract, 4 years, 5 years, and every 6 months there are payment rules.
That's why unless their contract to be contrary, the law provides for it. Section 2 opening is unless there is contrary to what is contained there,
Right.
the GST law allows you to do this.
Yes.
Provided you have a contract. अपनी मर्जी से.
Of course, based on the contract.
Yeah, it's available. We will discuss that provision. Price paid or payable for the said supply. So what is said? This is also taken from element of sale. Unless the goods are ascertained, no sale can happen under sales of goods act. When we say said supply means for which both the parties have contracted, only those goods, not future goods. Future goods की यहाँ बात नहीं है. The word used is past perfect tense. The said goods. Said means both the supplier recipient had ascertained the goods. हमें ये माल खरीदना है, या ये सर्विस लेनी है, या कोई कंपोजिट सर्विस लेनी है. It is defined very clear. That's why they have used the word said. Said supply of goods or services of both, where the supplier and recipient of the supply are not related, and the price is the sole consideration of the supply. Now that is why we read section 15 explanation first, related parties. If you are covered by one of those groups, you become a related parties. Section 15(1) is out of your purview. That is, if I issue an invoice showing goods worth 10 lakh rupees sold to Mr. X, transaction value is 10 lakh rupees. Right? This transaction value shall be sacrosanct, acceptable if between Mr. Verma and the buyer there is no relationship and the consideration is only money, no barter system. If any of these things happen, that is, the buyer is the recipient or my transaction is not only for money, then the valuation with section 15(1) is out. Then you come into valuation rules, I think 27, There are 2-3 propositions, we'll discuss them. All rules are basically same, the valuation principle. Let's take an example. For example, here, supposing you go to a pen, you go to a market, and you say, I want to buy a Parker pen sir from you. मेरे पास पुराना पार्कर है, मेरे को नया पार्कर है. कहते हैं पार्कर पेन 20,000 रुपए का है और आपके पेन की कीमत 2,000 रुपए. How much is paying? 18,000. Transaction value shall be 20,000. Right? That will be called open market value on such transactions. Right? Now supposing this valuation is not possible to be determined, then the rules provide cost plus 10% markup. That's the default rule. So whenever, supposing you receive a show cause notice, say look buddies, your companies or group companies, और यहाँ पे सब क्या रेफर कर रखे, like you do in income tax transfer pricing. Same principle here. Transfer pricing is much bigger. This is very specific to a particular supply of goods or services. तो आपको क्या देखना है? सबसे पहले आपको देखना है कि रिलेटेड पार्टी में आते हैं तो वो इसका शो कॉज नोटिस ठीक है. अब आपको देखना है कि डिड यू अंडरवैल्यू द गुड्स. तो एज ए लॉयर विच आपने पीस चेक किया इस आइटम के, अब वो सेम आइटम है, यू डिड नॉट बाय, यू आर सोल्ड गुड्स एट आर्म्स. अब टाटा वाले आपकी सारी गाड़ी कंपनी में अंदर स्टील बेचते हैं, जो मतलब ये सुनेंगे सारे केस खोल दिए जाएंगे. दे आर सेलिंग एट द सेम रेट. एंड जीएसटी बीइंग ए टैक्स which is revenue neutral, you don't get anything by undervaluing it.
So normally what is happening in branch transfer of stock now? There are no forms. We are doing cross check.
Because input tax credit मिलता है. The only thing is when there are huge transactions, it's a question of working capital. Now supposing in a business cycle, your cycle is 3 months. And 3 months you keep selling material and ITC keeps getting accumulated. Let us say 28% for example. And you are doing a business of 100 crores, 28 crores is blocked. Till you sell, will you make a taxable supply? Input tax credit is not available. There are certain industries that the business cycle is 3 months. For example, car is a cycle of 4 months. More than 5,000 parts to be bought, manufactured or whatever, before a car comes into pay. So इसमें लोग कुछ करते हैं, कुछ अंडर वैल्यू करते हैं. Stock transfer, for example, especially to your agents of various kinds, which we did definition. वहाँ माल पड़ा रहता है. एजेंट कहता है जी आप फाइनेंस पास मेरे को दे दो, मैं तो मक्का माल रख देता हूँ, आप फाइनेंस कर दो हमारे लिए. उसमें भी प्रॉब्लम है क्योंकि इंटरेस्ट भी आपको प्राइस में इंक्लूड करना है. सो देयर आर इश्यूज. सो व्हेनेवर वी आर confronted with a notice from revenue authorities that your transaction value is likely to be rejected because supplier and recipient were related parties and the consideration was not for money, you please show cause notice why should we not enhance your value to this value. Don't get panic. आपको सेक्शन 15 एक दोबारा पढ़ना है, रट्टा लगाओ तब दोबारा पढ़ना है आपको. फिर देखना है कि किससे डीलिंग की, क्या जी हमारा रिलेटेड पार्टी की डेफिनेशन में आते हैं हम लोग, नहीं आते. फिर देखना हमने कंसिडरेशन पैसे का था क्या था. Then you write to him, quote section 15(1), sir, we are not a related party by any such of imagination, nor our transaction was not only for consideration for money. Our transaction was pure for money. We have nothing else hidden in this. Therefore, our transaction is correct. However, as a support to it, we are including various other invoices issued by us where rates are same or similar. Are we clear on 15(1)?
इनवॉइस हम अपनी देनी पड़ेगी तो बैंक के बाकी की मार्केटिंग इनवॉइस देनी पड़ेगी.
हाँ जी.
इनवॉइस हम प्रोड्यूस करेंगे आर्म्स एंड प्रूव करने के लिए अपनी इनवॉइस देनी पड़ेगी या दूसरे मार्केट
जो हमने माल बेचा,
और पार्टी
इट्स ऑन सप्लाई.
नहीं, और पार्टी जो माल बेचा,
हाँ उनके
जो मार्केट में एक्टिवेट चल रहा है वो देनी पड़ेगा. असली केस हुआ था कि ईबे
नहीं वो मार्केट में तब होगा ओपन मार्केट वैल्यू इसमें आउट ऑफ सेक्शन 15(1). हम सेक्शन 51 में ही है. 51 पे वो ओपन मार्केट विल डिस्कस. हम कह रहे हैं 15. हाँ जी बोलो.
वही कहते हैं कि हम आपकी पहले तो मार्केट के अंदर मिलेंगे आपकी, कैसे प्रूव करके अंदर मिलेंगे. यूनिट तो चेंज चेक
नहीं वो कहने की बात है, करते नहीं करते रिपोर्ट में जाऊँगा फिर अंडर बिलिंग उसको दिखाने के लिए आपको देखना है कि सर ये हमने मिस्टर डॉक्टर राहुल को माल बेचा है 10 रुपए का, हमने बाकी सबको भी 10 रुपए का ही बेचा. Purchase price has no connection. We are dealing with supply, not for acquisition. सेक्शन 15 डील्स विद सप्लाई। आपकी परचेज 2 रुपए की हो, 3 रुपए की हो, 10 रुपए की, आपने वो कहता है कि जो डॉक्टर राहुल को बेचा 10 रुपए, वो अंडर बिलिंग है, आपको प्रूव करना है अंडर बिलिंग नहीं है। वो कहते नहीं हमने इनको ये सेलो का पेन बेचा था, हमने बाकी लोगों को 10 रुपए का ही बेचा है, देन ही कैन नॉट प्रूव एनीथिंग इज अंडर बिलिंग।
अमेज़न की साइट ओपन कर लेते हैं, कहते हैं वहाँ पे
नहीं वो अमेज़न साइट जब आएगी जब आप रिलेटेड पार्टीज में हो या कैश कंसिडरेशन नहीं है, तब अमेज़न साइट इज रेलेवेंट, बट अमेज़न इज नॉट बीन adopted here.
Sir, I think it will be good for all. It's a little complicated transaction which normally is happening with e-commerce operators. I gave a legal opinion. Usually in e-commerce operators, sir, what happens is, I am based in Delhi. My e-commerce operator's warehouse, which is my agent, is based in Haryana. I have also taken a virtual registration or a additional registration in Haryana, and my godown is in the warehouse of the e-commerce operator or whatever is the logistic partner. Now they give PO on the higher value, and they sell it at 43, 45, 35, whatever is the percentage ratio, less than that on their portal. So the portal price is less, PO price is, example, say it is 1000. I am shipping my goods from Delhi to Haryana from their logistics only. They are only generating the e-way bill. Now e-way bill is at 1000 rupees. Once I am doing and the final product is getting sold at say 600 rupees, 40% is the margin. Now sir, what happens is when I file my returns as a seller, because मैंने अपना material suppose e-commerce Flipkart पे sell किया था, I had transferred that at a higher PO on the e-way bill value. Actual price was my 600 rupees, which was my cost, or maybe was my value, cost plus whatever was the margin. Now once authorities come back to you, maybe doing a GST audit, that sir your e-way bill has a 1000 rupees PO. You have done a transaction at 600, and therein also you have commission and other you have a 18% of transactional commission and everything. How do you justify this? And what you are selling and what is your markup price on the portal is less, and your e-way bill transactions are, then it becomes a big problem.
No, there is no problem, because section 15 allows you a discount. All e-commerce discounts are pre-supply discounts. They are mentioned before you supply. Pre-supply discounts are automatically allowed in your tax and invoice. Nobody can ever question it.
But sir, they are not.
But that's okay. What they do, we are not bothered. We're discussing law. Pre-supply discounts can be deducted right from your invoices, whatever could be the value. GST is not based on higher or lower value. Transaction value is what is mentioned on the invoice. It can be below the price. There is no bar. There is no 92G VAT tax applicable in GST law for the time being. Now the question here comes is, your e-way bill carries 1000 rupees. Normally what my advice to people is, if possible, send the invoice along with it. और e-commerce का send उनको तो कुछ बना नहीं है ना. If you go to Azio site, you get invoice straight up.
Sir, Azio is not a e-commerce operator. I'm sorry, I'm giving you a food for thought. It is a B2B supplier.
Then I know it's good supply, but I'm saying their invoice comes. I know it. Mukesh Ambani doesn't deal with any agent. He makes all the money. I know it. I know it. What I'm saying is,
Indian e-commerce operators, which are even
लेकिन e-commerce में कोई इतना बड़ा, you are not dealing with the e-commerce. You are not referring to e-commerce case. No, you are referring to e-commerce.
Amazon, so that is why.
No, Amazon says कि वो अक्सर साइट खोल लेते हैं. Amazon site has no value. You have to prove your transaction value was a fair market value, and same price was sold to all your customers. 2-3% here and there. Nobody will question you. अब नीचे वो क्या करते हैं वो एक अलग issue. We are discussing a pure legal proposition. इसमें legal में हमें कोई problem नहीं. Right? Let's come to 15.2. The value of supply shall include. This is where most of the chartered accountants have miserably failed in audits. They have not checked this point at all. Trial balance को इस angle से किसी ने, mostly chartered accountants ने, while filing a form 9, they did not check this. Especially in terms of companies who are trading, including manufacturing. Now, this is a mandate of section 15. Is the value of supply shall include the value of supply of what? Goods, services. Any taxes, duties, cesses, fees and charges levied under any law for the time being in force other than this act, the state's goods service tax वगैरह वगैरह is charged separately by the supplier any tax means it could be by state government or central government, any tax, duties, cesses, for example, in Kerala they limit a flood cess. Cesses, fees and charges levied under any law for the time being in force other than this act, the state goods service so and so and so. Let us take off land development. There is a royalty charged by the state government for mines, for example. It's a part of your transaction value. You have to pay tax. Who pays this in material? As a supplier, it was your duty to pay tax on this. Supposing there is a contract, this earthing fee, earthing stuff shall be paid by the buyer. No. It was a supply of whatever you are doing. It was your duty. You must pay tax on this. Any kind of assess levied. Assess levied on what? That's more relevant. Any taxes, duties, cesses, fees and charges under law for the time being in force other than this act. We are talking about what? Value of goods, supply or services. These taxes, cesses, etc. shall be applicable to those goods or services only, not any other thing. For this act has jurisdiction to levy CGST on intrastate transaction of goods, services or and both. So if these charges, cesses, levies, duties, fines or whatever is leviable on the goods or services or both which supplier is providing, then this is a part of your transaction value other than the GST part. So what does it mean? Supposing you entered into a price for 10 lakh rupees. So nominally अगर 10 लाख 18% हो गया बिल बट क्या? No. Supposing 10,000 के ऊपर 1,000 पे जो टैक्सेस आपको देने थे लेविएबल है, आपने दिए या नहीं दिए, स्टैम्प ऑन मटेरियल, वो वही कि आपने दिए नहीं दिए, चार्ज किए नहीं, दैट्स immaterial. If on those goods or supply of services or both some fine, the cesses, charges, duties, whatever were leviable under any law other than GST, आपको वो 10,000 में इंक्लूड करना था. वो दिन 200 रुपए थे, तो आपको टैक्स 10,200 रुपए पे देना था, 10,000 पे नहीं देना. Right? I have two cases in Bombay. Of course, because I deal with infra projects. The liability is coming up of 33 crores on the. They are huge toll road projects. Mar gaya kya? We have said please pay. There's nothing we can do. And this is also not an arbitral matter, because the rate is all inclusive, so there is no arbitration also here. So whenever you draw a trial balance of your client, go through it. Is there anything leviable? Client से पूछे इस पे और कोई आप रॉयल्टी वगैरह देनी होती है आपको कुछ digging fees है, कुछ और चीज़ है. For example, in toll road projects, whenever you dug up trees, you have to pay certain charges to the government. Those trees you have to replant. फिर पैसे लगते हैं उसके. फिर जो रोड के अंदर से जो निकलते हैं वो भी आपको देना है पैसे. They are all charges being incurred by you to dictate to the government for what? For that works contract service. For that what you are doing. All this is a part of your transaction value. The word is that this shall include. There is no way out for you. Next.
सर जैसे अभी इनवॉइस पे टीसीएस लग के आ रहा है, वो भी एनी टैक्स एग्जामिनेशन में आएगा?
No. I think TCS पे clarification आ सकती है.
TCS is a part of
ट्रांजैक्शन वैल्यू में
इस पे नहीं करते. Not to my knowledge. आप कारोबारी नहीं करते. उस पे कोई सर्कुलर आ गया है. शुरू में कर रहे थे लोग झगड़ा, आपने हैं? नहीं, जीएसटी में भी कुछ आया था कि TCS is not a part of your consideration. जैसे you take this as a pure agent. Rule 31. You are collecting on behalf of the government, and you are giving back to the government. It is not going into your PT, therefore TCS पे GST नहीं लगता. No. Any amount that supplier is liable to pay in relation to such supply, but which has been incurred by recipient of the supply and not included in the price actually paid or payable for the goods or services. Supposing the contract is from Hyderabad to Delhi FOR, that is the freight cost to be paid by the supplier. Freight issues a bill for 10 lakh rupees, 18%, and it tells the recipient you pay the freight, we will reimburse. freight is paid by the recipient. No. It will attract GST on the freight because it was your duty to as a supplier to pay the freight in the above contracts. Similarly, when you go to buy steel, there are cutting charges, etc., etc. Client says, "आप दे दो, हम आपको बाद में adjustment कर देंगे." No. So you have to see a transaction to transaction. If it was under the supplier's mandate to incur those charges, and these charges are now being incurred by recipient for whatever ABC reason, now those charges shall form a part of transaction value of the supplier. You will have to go backward and pay tax and interest. अगर नहीं दिया.
But sir, just a vague thought. Normally when this happens, like you said, the supplier says to the recipient कि आप दे दो and we'll reimburse. If he's paying, so he's paying with taxes. He's also paying the taxes value.
Always, I told you very first day, there is a difference between output tax and input tax. We are not concerned about recipient tax. Whose duty was this?
No, that's
Whose duty was this?
of course.
Reverse charge किसकी duty है? Supposing you do a transaction which is subject to 9(3), you charge a forward tax. Can the recipient say, "I will not pay reverse charge"? Answer is no.
Yeah, of course.
He cannot.
But
So we have to never confuse between output tax and input tax. This is normal mistake we all make. टैक्स तो चलाएगा गवर्नमेंट को, अगर जान लोगे बच्चे की, हाँ वो जान ले गया. Let him claim, if they refund to me, then let him claim refund if he can. So wherever there is a duty on the supplier, only supplier has to do it. Output, input, inverse relationship. That thought is correct, logically correct, not legally, not legally.
that's why I told you it's a vague thought.
No, it's a good thought. That's how we learn law, all of us.
उसको on
C is very important. Incidental expenses, including commission. So how do we read it? Incidental expenses is specific, followed by an inclusive definition, including commission and packing charged by the supplier to the recipient of a supply, and again any amount charged for anything done by the supplier in respect of supply of goods or services, both at the time of or before delivery of goods or supply or services. Last few words are definition of sale price under VAT and Central Sales Tax Act, but other than this everything is different. That is, default rule is anything incurred by the supplier in any form for those goods or services or both before these goods or services or both are received by the recipient is a part of transaction. My friend Rajesh Jain has a case. We have discussed both together, it's coming in High Court. We have discussed for umpteen hours, both of us still disagree. Till yesterday night we were disagreeing. I was not agreeing with him. An importer purchased goods worth 23 crores. He raised an invoice on high CCL basis and he wrote commission 1%, 23 lakh rupees. Now service tax people have caught him, commission पे service tax दो. इसमें तो clear है, आपको देना है. But the one view is, if IC sale is exempt, how can commission not be exempt? That is Rajesh Jain's view. There are some judgments, some criminal high court judgments also for or against. My view is little drastic. I say commission cannot come into being till the transaction is complete. So unless you say that both import and IC sale but merge with each other, it's very difficult. That's why the case is in High Court. Somebody has rejected it. So therefore, when you come to clause 3, just default rule, कि जो कुछ supplier ने खर्च किया सब पे टैक्स लगा, तो बाहर को इनपुट टैक्स एडिस को मिलना है. He is not losing anything. There is no tax planning required here as a professional कि हमें कुछ पे शायद पैसे बच जाएंगे ये होगा. बेटा ऐसी प्लानिंग है. चला दी. Thank you. So therefore, by default rule, ट्रायल बैलेंस देखो, अगर उसके कुछ ऐसे खर्चे हैं जो गुड सप्लाई पे जाते हैं, उसको पूछो आपने टैक्स लगाया नहीं लगाया तो उसका आईटीसी रिवर्स करो. आईटी रिवर्स अलाउड है. You don't have to pay cash. After notice you will have problem, but at this stage you have no problem. So incidental expenses तो आपको लगाने including commission etc 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 जो भी पे लिखा है सब पे आपको टैक्स देना है. Anything done by the supplier before the goods or services both are supplied to the recipient. This is subsection 3. Subsection 4. Interest or late fee or penalty for delayed payment of any consideration for any supply. ये तीनों चीजों के कानूनी मतलब बिल्कुल अलग अलग. Supposing there was a contract. Let's welcome Mr. Bhatia, please. Yes, Sir, please. Sir, इधर. आजा सर इधर. सर हमें इंस्पिरेशन मिलती है ना. पढ़ाने वालों को इंस्पिरेशन मिलती है. एक तरफ डॉक्टर एक तरफ स्कॉलर तो मेरे को बहुत ज्यादा होने लगी. So this interest, fee and penalty in law there are all three different meanings. For example, if A enters into a contract with B, I am supplying goods worth you 10 lakh rupees, you have to make payment within 30 days or I'll charge you interest at the rate of 18%. Now when will the interest liability occur? Whenever you have this contract, the price is provisional, not final. That is a big problem in GST law. The payment is made 30 days, chapter is closed, but the very fact you have an interest liability coming after 30 days. So whenever you levy interest, it shall relate back to the original date of invoice. Only then the invoice value shall be final. I told you judgment of sale versus rate of West Supreme Court has clarified this. So the 10,000 rupees on which you charge interest of say 100 rupees after 3 months. So this 100 rupees tax shall be payable from the date when tax was payable on 10,000 rupees. Tax interest will have to reverse. Or a late fee. This is automatically again the same thing. Or penalty. Penalty is a form of kind of a liquidated damages. That is notwithstanding whether the supplier incurs any financial loss or not. This amount is fixed. For example, हमारी रिटर्नों की दो तरह के पेनल्टी है, प्रोसीजरल है, सब्सटेंटिव है. जो प्रोसीजरल में फिक्स्ड है, 100 rupees per day, 200 rupees, whatever they do. So all three words are dealing with delayed payments only, or delayed work. But in law, all three have different significances. But in terms of GST accounting, all three shall relate back. But बहुत लोगों ने इसमें इंटरेस्ट नहीं दिया, आप लिटिगेशन में.
सर इंटरेस्ट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है कि इंटरेस्ट देना है और उसमें इंटरेस्ट चार्ज नहीं किया सर.
फिर कुछ नहीं. तो ठीक है. पैसे लिया नहीं, लिटिगेशन इंटरेस्ट इज पेड. बड़े कॉन्ट्रैक्ट करता है वो. बहुत पैसे होते हैं. 18% के लिए मैं इंटरेस्ट माफ नहीं करूंगा. और हम जो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट पे लिखते हैं तो जीएसटी और लेट पेमेंट shall also be manual may be not asked. Next, E. We had lot of cases. So we are doing section 15 CGST. On page C226. So remember the definition of central government, state government we did? Subsidy is directly linked to the price, excluding subsidies provided by central government and state governments. For the purpose of this section, the amount of subsidy shall be included in value supply of the supplier who receives the subsidy. Subsidy directly linked to the price. Now there are two kinds of subsidy based on quantity basis. This is the only price sensitive subsidy, if given by central government or state government, shall be excluded from transaction. If it is not given by central government or state government, this will form, you cannot deduct, you cannot reduce your transaction value because you are offering subsidy. If you have to go to a case where telecom company subsidy दी थी, वो झगड़े चले इसके ऊपर. Now what is the meaning of subsidy? Subsidy internationally is normally given by under a statutory scheme. World over. Otherwise you have discounts, no? आपको subsidy कहने की जरूरत क्या है? But to get some extra benefit, we camouflage a transaction in a contract we write, it's a subsidy. Subsidy, most of the Supreme Court judgment says, is generally linked with some statutory schemes. Or some, like UNDP, which we were to stop your काम करते हैं, subsidy मिलती है. For example, EV cards. Electronic cards you will getting subsidy of whatever, 15% or 20%. That's a subsidy given by state government, not by Tata Motors. Had Tata Motors given, no, then they will follow section 15(1) up. Invoice by discount, there is no issue. But once you want to get a subsidy after the sale, and now you want to reduce your tax liability, a benefit क्या होगा इसमें? If you issue a credit note, till the recipient reverses ITC, you cannot reduce your output tax liability. In case of subsidy, it doesn't happen. Subsidy, not only you get the absolute subsidy benefit plus tax benefit, दोनों में आपको फायदा हो सकता है if you plan it well. Whereas in case of credit notes on invoice, whether pre-sale or post-sale, in a pre-sale, the buyer doesn't get input tax credit, he gets his input tax credit. Whereas in the post-sale, if you issue credit note, till he reverses, you cannot get benefit in output tax liability. If he doesn't reverse, you can't get it. So that is the case of subsidies. So remember 15.2, all these 5 subclauses A, B, C, D, E, all are independent. There is no word or, but after D there is a word and. After subclause D there is a word and. Explanation. So you know the meaning of explanation? Explanation clarifies a substantive provision. Clarity, that is the function of explanation. Explanation, for the purposes of this subsection, the amount of subsidy shall be included in the value of supply of the supplier who receives the subsidy. Supplier has to pay tax, they are not linking it with the buyer. 3. The value of supply shall not include any discount. Shall not include means if you give discount, you will subtract the discount from the supplier value. Now, this subsection 3 is totally different from section 2(1) of Central Sales Tax Act or 2(b) of VAT Act defining sale or sale price. There is no definition of price here in GST law. It's only value. Now, we know the difference between cost and value. Now, the third term, price. Price normally means value. Normally. When we touch the litigation, I tell you the price is also different from value. But in general definition, we say price value there is no difference. Cost value there is a lot of difference. So price also includes a part of profit. But price can have certain other ramifications which value will not have. Certain conditions can be exchanged between buyer and seller. So the value of supply shall not include any discount which is given before or at the time of supply if such discount has been duly recorded in the invoice issued in respect of such supply. Before or at the time of supply, that is that this discount with a pre-supply situation. जब भी आप इस एफएमसी कंपनी के आप प्राइसिंग लास्ट में लिखा होता है 5% ट्रेड डिस्काउंट, ये डिस्काउंट, वो डिस्काउंट, वो डिस्काउंट. Now this is unlinked with targets. You know the India Supreme Court ruling on trade discounts. This has been nullified here. Pre-supply आपका डिस्काउंट है. अगर कोई भी डिस्काउंट आपने इनवॉइस पे दे दिया एट द टाइम ऑफ सप्लाई, सेक्शन 12, no questions are ever asked, right? But there is a word and after subclause Roman 1. So what is the function of and? And it will be read together. So both conditions will have to be satisfied if you want to reduce the value of credit notes, invoice or off invoice. Second condition is input tax credit as is attributable to discount on the basis of document issued by supplier has been this piece here, that B is after the supply has been effective. That is, the discount still remains discount agreed in terms of pre-supply, but now you are not giving discount on reflecting discount in the invoice. You are giving after the invoice. What happens now? जब आप इनवाइस से दिया आपने 100 रुपए ट्रांजैक्शन 10 रुपए डिस्काउंट 90 रुपए टैक्स लगाया 18 पर 10% 9 रुपए, तो बायर को 9 रुपए इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट मिला, राइट? उसमें तो कोई झगड़ा है नहीं. जीएसटी रेवेन्यू न्यूट्रल, गवर्नमेंट को 9 रुपए दिए, 9 रुपए से ले लिए, आगे वो टैक्स लगाएगा, आपने देता रहेगा. अब इसमें आप क्या कर रहे हैं? आपने 100 रुपए लगाया, उस पर 10 रुपए टैक्स लगाया, 10 रुपए आपने आउटपुट टैक्स दिया. अब ये 10 रुपए क्रेडिट उसको आप सप्लाई के बाद दे रहे हैं. So if 1 rupee you want to reduce your output tax liability in the period in which you issue the credit note within the same financial year, then they say the buyer has to reverse. Till buyer reverses, you cannot reduce your output tax liability based on a credit. So that is the meaning of and. In practice, if such discount is established in terms of an agreement entered into at or before the time of supply and specifically linked to relevant invoices, and input tax credit is as attributable to the discount on the basis of document specified has been reversed by the recipient by the supplier. अब देखिए इसकी ड्राफ्टिंग 15(3)(a) followed by semicolon the word and. Sub clause B clause 1 and तीनों में and है. That is, this discount established before supply has to be satisfied in both the cases. Now let's take a scenario. This is the law, but few high courts have come out GST ke this is a kind of inclusive stuff. There can be more variants to this. Supposing हमारे पे माल बेचा, माल खराब है, भाई कहता वापस ले या compensation दे, you give 50% compensation, right? What is section 34?